Speed?
Gotcha.
All right. So, thank you, sir.
Pleasure. Pleasure being here with my own name,
Your own
the
name?
Fox Channel,
Yeah.
the Fox Radio,
Yeah. We named it after you.
and the Fox Vicente.
Yeah.
I wish they were my parents. Okay.
Yeah, I know, huh? You could sell them TV stations like that.
See?
It just happened.
Okay.
So first, tell me why you're in San Diego.
Okay, we came here for a couple of conferences. One was yesterday with the Sociedad Interamericana de Prensa that gathers most media from all throughout Latin America, and also through the Association in the States of Editorial Newspapers and Media. So it was a great meeting with a lot of relevant media leaders. And today we are having at 4 o'clock this afternoon with the Institute of Interborders from the University of San Diego. We're having a conference there for students, and it's open to the public this afternoon. And then we move to Houston. Tomorrow I have a conference there at Texas A&M. And then we fly to Florida, and we have a conference there with the Association of Tourism people from all of the Americas.
You're on a North American tour?
Well, I do this for fundraising for the foundation of Centro Fox, which is in Guanajuato, Mexico. And it's a presidential library. It's a think tank. It's an academic center. And that's where we are, and all of you are invited to come at any time.
Yeah. So this morning I heard you on These Days, KPBS, talking about your proposal to legalize drugs or liberalize the drug laws in Mexico, and how you think that may help Mexico fight the drug war. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it's an integrated approach to coming out of the trap where we are, because Mexico just happens to be in between the drug-producing nations of the South, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, and the mammoth market, consumer market in United States, consumers of drugs, which generates all the funding for the whole of the chain. And we're talking about millions, billions of US dollars that are generated here, collected here in the United States, laundered here and transferred to the cartels to equip them financially, and with that money they buy the ammunitions, the weapons they need, and the salaries they have to pay on their payroll. So it's basically not our problem. We just happen to be in between, and that's why we need the action of all of us together, mainly United States. Because the question is, once the drug crosses the border, who takes it from there? Who moves it to the markets up north, to Washington, Seattle, Chicago? Maybe right now there's a cargo load crossing the border, and who's going to take it from there? Who's going to move it to those markets? And so it's a joint effort that we have to do. And that's why I question myself if we ever are going to eradicate drugs from the reach of our kids. Or better, we prepare our kids not to demand or not to look for drugs to consume. I think that's a much easier way to do. And it just has to do with educating, informing. I'm sure most of the kids will not take a drug if they are pretty well aware that that will start killing them, that they will affect their brain, that it will affect their health and their body. So if we can do that job like we have done or are doing in cigarettes, like we do in alcohol, where people is aware that if you take alcohol in excess, you're in a way killing yourself. And by the way, there's much more death people by alcohol excess or by cigarette smoking than there is for drug using or abuse.
Do you have any sort of any examples of where liberalized drug laws are accomplishing these kinds of goals?
Yes, we do have some examples. Number one, I would start with the first one that took that step, which is Holland. Holland is open and free, legal, to consume drugs, to buy drugs, and nothing special has happened except two things. One, that there is no increase in consumption, and number two, that there is a total separating of violence from the consumption of drugs. Number two, Portugal, 10 years now that they legalized everything. There is a Cato report, K-A-T-O, a think tank from Washington, D.C., and they have a report of the 10 years, and the end result is 25% reduction on consumption. So those who advocate that once you liberalize drugs, consumption will just go up and up, that's not true. We fortunately have responsible people, responsible kids, responsible youth that will take their own decision, free will decision whether to consume or not. They would not just go and buy because it's legal. Plus the fact that when they did it, in the case of Portugal, they kept black market prices. So if anyone insists on buying drug, they will have to buy it at the same high prices than the black market. And all that bunch of money, which is this size, instead of going to criminals, or instead of buying weapons and ammunition, and instead of this war killing people, government will have this bunch of money to illustrate, to educate, to inform, to prevent, and it works.
Do you think that, can you kind of shift gears a little bit to talk about Tijuana and Juarez and how the security there, why is it that Tijuana, or Lezeo at least, is credited with this, but in general Tijuana has been able to manage their violence and their security issues more than Juarez?
Yeah. Okay, I think the strategies are the same. Pretty much depends on your enemies. Pretty much depends on who is taking the decisions on that other side, the criminal side. And that's what makes a difference. There are cities in Mexico that have the problem very intense, but it's a dozen of them. The rest, we have hundreds of cities, hundreds of towns all around Mexico, which were in peace, for instance, in our state in Guanajuato. So this is a war and a fight for markets. And again, the market factor is always present. And the other one is to control the routes where the drug comes into the state. But at the very end, the question is, why is concentrated the violence in the border, including Tijuana and Juarez and Matamoros and Laredo? Because the drug gets there, and after Mexican government has been able to quit most of the supply and the transit of it, but some still reaches there. There is the crossing point. And again, I question, where is the U.S. authority? Where are the drug enforcement agencies of the United States? If it's such a few places, why don't they stop it there? Right here in San Diego. Why let it go up north? Who is doing that and how they can do it? We're talking about tons, huh? We're talking about tons. We're talking about cargo loads.
A ton. Oh, actually 1 ton.
Cargo loads. How come they cannot see it? And this takes me to something that happens everywhere else but in Mexico. You have a balance. You have a balance of this crime and homicides and drugs and whatever. And usually underground is the fight. It's the police fighting the criminals with intelligence, with wisdom, with the strategy. Only in Mexico is on the surface. Only in Mexico is very visible. And it was in Colombia some time ago, but today it's only Mexico. Why? Question, why? Because Presidente Calderón, courageous man, decided to control drugs, that he would gain that war and that he would stop drugs from reaching the border. He would start drugs to reach youth in the United States. He is doing a job for this nation. It has to be recognized because I don't see this nation doing the effort not only to reduce consumption, not only to stop trafficking, not only to stop money laundering and money coming back to Mexico, not only to stop the free flow of guns and ammunition that is coming from the United States to Mexico. Look at this case that is being discussed publicly. Those arms that, according to the story that has been given here in the United States, they let freely cross 2,000 arms into Mexico with the idea that they would find out who was buying them. Well, if they designed and if they proceeded with the move, why didn't they catch up who was buying the gun? So there are interests here, there is corruption here, same as we have in Mexico. So the only thing I'm telling to the public, don't just blame Mexico without having the information. We're doing our part of the job. And the question is this nation doing its part of the job that has to be done?
Do you think that's a perception? I mean, there seems to be like a divide between the perception of Mexico within sort of the political elite and the perception of Mexico's responsibility and Americans' responsibility between just sort of the laymen. Do you think that those perceptions are in conflict and that's why?
No. What I think is that through media and through the lack of full information by the audience, the idea is, what happens with Mexico? I mean, have they gone crazy? Why are they killing each other? Why they are so violent? Well, dig in, find out why. The why is here. The answer is here in this nation. It's drug consumption. It's all the mammoth amount of money that goes back to Mexico to cartels to nourish them and to make them so evil. Imagine in our case in Mexico, we're losing approximately, according to the figures I have, 200,000 kids in the last 4 years, which were kids from 14 to 25-year-olds, and that they were killed, 40,000 of them, another 40,000 that killed them, and about 100,000 that are working for the cartels. And each one has a story. They were not born criminals. They don't have that in their genes. They just maybe lost their way on the road of their lives. Maybe they didn't have that job that they were insisting to have. Maybe they didn't find the scholarship to go to the university and be in school. Maybe they have broken homes because the father has migrated looking for a better living to his family, and he's here in the States, and the mother is there attending the kids, and she has to raise the money to feed the kids, to bring food to the family, and maybe she is disattending the education of those kids. But again, that's the story in Mexico. What is the story here? It has to be the same. All those kids that go to nightclubs, that go to the corner of the high school, and they get the drug there. I mean, they just get it there. What is the Drug Enforcement Agency? So we have to work together. Now, solutions. United States, number one, reduce the free flow of weapons and ammunition. Number two, reduce the consumption of drug in this nation. Number three, control the money laundering going back to Mexico. And number four, think about the step that California was about to take. Legalizing, depenalizing. Many states have legalized a drug for medical use. And we know for sure today that marijuana is less harming to your health than cigarettes or alcohol. Those 4 points for United States. Mexico, okay, number one, I would withdraw the army from the streets. That is causing this unbalance, this shakeup in the visible part of the market. And each day that goes through, each of the two enemies are more offended. The army is more offended, the cartels are more offended because they just come in and shoot them, like those 72 that we saw. So it's something that we have to stop. We need, in a way, a tregua. ¿Cómo se dice tregua? You stop fire. You stop fire. Stopping fire, so that we can rebuild upon that. We did it with Comandante Marcos in Chiapas. We stopped fire, and then we rebuilt the issue, and it was totally solved. Okay, so Mexico, army back to. Mexico, job number two, or task number two, to build efficient accountable police corps, national and state level, and some cities that need their own police. And do it with efficiency, with quality, and make sure that they will do the job better than the Army. Number 3, elect those officials, those sheriffs that are going to be running this police directly by the people, so that political parties are not involved. Parties and matters complicate everything by bringing in different police chiefs. So let's make a professional career out of the leaders and out of the police leaders that are going to be doing this job. And number 3, legalization. Has to be proposed, has to be debated. It's not long away since when this state, California, will take the step. And I really think that would be a great step forward. Like you did in Chicago 100 years ago with the alcohol prohibition. Once it was eradicated, the prohibition, then things came back to normal and things came back to balance. Still there's alcohol consumed, still there are criminals, but now it's under order and balance. And number 4, the alternatives. You have here the best example that I have seen right here in this city that are called the ¿cómo se llaman? The ones we visited with your daughter?
Reality changers.
Eh? Reality changers. I made a visit there. I had the opportunity to see those kids that are on a very difficult part of town in San Diego, that they are gangs and they're out of school. So this organization makes a job of inviting them to come. And they prepare them for years, coming in the afternoons, so that they are optionable for a scholarship in different universities, in Harvard, in USB, in University of New Mexico, and everywhere, the universities here. So they have that option now, and they are prepared, and they're getting hundreds of scholarships to go to Harvard. Imagine a kid which was in a gang here in San Diego, all of a sudden he is in Harvard with a scholarship. I mean, that's a great job. That we have to extend to Mexico. That we have to massify. We have to compete against the option of joining a cartel, and when they get there, to the option of being in a school, to the option of having a job, to the option of competing in that circumstance. And I think this is a great program. That would be the other 4th issue that Mexico should be implementing.
So, it's like you're talking about the opportunities really existing in Mexico.
Yes, sir.
That you want these opportunities to exist in the same way that they exist in the United States.
Yes, sir.
I mean, how do you do that? It seems that like this lack of opportunity there is systemic in a lot of ways. You know?
Well, 2 things. First, education at home. Mariscal Sucre, when he had the responsibility to govern Quito, that city in Latin America, when he was proposed by his team to put together a police corps, which did not exist at that time, I'm talking 400 years ago, 200 years ago, that did not exist at that time, he said, the best police is the one we have within ourselves. Meaning that if we have moral education, if we proceed with ethics, if we believe in well-being and well-doing, we have our own limits. We will not join cartels just because they offer me more money, because we know that's not morally and ethically correct. So the best police is the one you have within yourself. That's where we should start. More education, more promotion, more learning about drugs and the evil they cause. And number 2, opportunities. Then opportunities, as you said. Because even if you are well prepared and well educated, you still have the problem of having opportunities. So yes, that's something that we have to build in Mexico. And
the United States profits from this brain drain. I mean, we get a lot of very well-educated
And money,
from
man.
all over the world to come
Much
here.
more money you get here from Mexicans moving to San Diego, to Houston, to there's wealthy Mexicans, professionals to do business and invest in this nation. And that's because they are afraid now to stay in Mexico. And yes, United States is benefiting from that. But I mean, no matter, I mean, it's okay that that happens. But what we need is to stop the problem in Mexico, and we have to do it through what I have proposed.
Do you think that now that the PRI is in control in Tijuana, that's going to kind of hamper these plans that, like Ramos has put forward? There was a law enforcement accreditation that he recently got rid of. Lezeola left. Huerta's in charge.
I
There's rumors of
don't
him
think it's a partisan matter. Of course, it is a leaders matter. Some do better than others, but not partisan. It has to be an altogether joint effort. Because as well as you could speak about the mayor, you could speak about the chief of police there, which is an army general, which is doing a great job. So it's coordination between three levels of government. It's leadership, passionate, compromise doing, but still it's force against force, violence against violence. Maybe in Tijuana they have solved part of the problem. Those criminals now are in Juarez. And if in Juarez they get a lot of pressure, then they will be in Acapulco, Guerrero, or they will be in Sinaloa. So it has to be a national effort. But again, I would insist, violence will never end up with violence. That's my thinking. So I think that we have better strategies to do, and has to do with all what I have mentioned now.
when you compare what Mexico did to deal with Comandante Marcos to the cartels, Mexico had to have a dialogue with Marcos in order to do this. How do you create a dialogue with these?
That is a very delicate subject matter. And right now, this guy, this intellectual Sicilia, whose son was killed in Cuernavaca, Morelos, which is putting all this movement of citizens against violence, is trying to impulse an effort that is not violence against violence, that is different. And I think that there's the key is going to be right there in these cases, and what the experience for public opinion is to learn more and more about this issue. I really think that the next big opportunity is the electoral process for the presidency in year 2012. I think democracy, as always, will give us a chance to rethink, to debate, to come up with new ideas during the process, to discover the leaders that will have the capacity and the commitment to move things ahead for better results. So this opportunity is coming now, and I really expect that it will give us the solutions that we need. But at the same time, I come back to the joint effort we have to do all together.
Did you the WikiLeaks controversy that came out about saying that in that cable it said that the Mexican authorities were far too dependent on American authorities. It seems that you're kind of saying, well, that's not necessarily the case here, because American authorities aren't necessarily taking their role as seriously as they could.
Well, I think that first public opinion now understands the weekly or whatever his name thing. It's the daily talk of all the diplomats and all the embassies in the whole of the world. Mm-hmm. If we could tape all what is said in the Mexican embassy, or if what we could say, what happens here or anywhere, it's the regular mandate that diplomacy has and offices have and drug enforcement agencies have. So this guy came in with a very interesting way of leaking the information, but public opinion should be aware that most of those sayings is just regular conversations in tables where things are discussed. That doesn't mean that it's public policy or that it's instructions or that it's mandates to people coming out of there. So it's affected in some cases, and many others have not. I don't think that those cases where it has affected, it's fair that that happened. The ambassador to Mexico, which resigned to his post because of this, I think he was very close to the truth on everything he said. And, and it's what he gathered from public opinion and what he reported to a State Department here in the States. So, I mean, I don't know why the reaction was forcing him to resign. He's a good man, he's smart, he is very capable of sustaining a very fruitful relationship between Mexico and the United States. Unfortunately, he's not there. So the sooner the better that somebody else is appointed for that position in Mexico.
So what is there one thing San Diegans can do to further this? You're taking on in a very similar way sort of the elder statesman role in the same way that Clinton has. What is it that San Diegans can do to kind of further this message of essentially peace? Is what you're.
Well, yeah, keep close to Tijuanans and to Baja Californians, Mexico, and let's keep the relationship. I mean, from citizen to citizen, from family to family, from business to business, everything is flowing successfully. It's big understanding, big loyalty in our relationship, a big compassion and love in our relationship. Let's keep it like that and let governments come to some solutions because they complicate everything. Usually governments and politicians complicate everything. So let's keep our personal relationship. I see that Universidad San Diego is so close to the universities there in Tijuana and Mexicali and Baja California. And the people crossing that border, I mean, it's over 1 million people cross the border every day to come to work here, to go to work to Mexico, to go to enjoy themselves in Mexico, to come shopping here to the States. It's a very busy region. I mean, it's incredible the amount of activity and business done in both sides. Let's keep it like that. And to the authorities, let's demand that they open more bridges, because crossing this bridge, I mean, it's tough. Takes too much time. So please, authorities from United States and Mexico, please open more bridges. And more important, to the United States by message, tear off that wall. It's not going to work for you. Or instead of building walls, we should be building bridges of understanding. And that's what we regular people do. We regular citizens do. So governments, please be up to your responsibility.
Is there anything else you want to add that you think I've missed, that you think is important?
Know that if we are still on time on this interview, come to San Diego University to the Interborder conference that we're having today at 4 o'clock. And if not, please visit us in Central Parks. There you have a home. Leon, Guanajuato, state of Guanajuato. Community of San Cristobal, where you have your home, where we have the best enchiladas, the best mole you ever tasted,
I don't know.
and a bottle of tequila waiting for you.
My grandmother would argue very strongly with you. She's like,
and a big bottle of
her
tequila.
mole is the best. You were the first candidate that wasn't PRI that my wife's grandmother voted for.
Ah, okay.
The first one.
Ella está por ahí.
She's in Cuernavaca.
Grandmother, hola, grandmother en Cuernavaca.
She's passed.
You're gonna have to speak loud.
Well, grandmother.
Well,
Gracias.
And that now in California, what is it, the Census Bureau came out and said
50 million all across the United States.
Exactly.
Now we're gaining our territory back. By poblar Rome.
it wasn't really.
And he thinks that to sustain that by saying that by then there will be so many Mexican cultures, so 5 generations here. And if they keep the other side, they keep molestando, bothering Mexicans and treating them something like the Confederate Army.
Yeah.
And the union will happen in 2080.
Oh,
it's incredible that he's a very United States.
I mean, it's interesting because you've got this large ethnic group, but they're living sort of under an American political system.